But right now, we're going to be having the focus and spotlight, and I'm going to be replacing my spotlight with Hannah Studley, our guest for today. Thank you so much, Hannah. Take it away. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear about this awesome topic.
Hi, thank you, Leslie. And that was so much fun in the breakout rooms. I wasn't expecting that. It was fun. Um, so when Leslie and I were talking about what topic I could share with you guys, we came up with this. I wrote it down here. It's overcoming insecurity, overwhelm, and the myth of imposter syndrome. So I'm going to take those topics, but rearrange the order a little bit, because when I was looking at it this morning, I can see that insecurity is at the foundation of the other two. And I'm going to explain how I see that to be true. So I want to start with overwhelm, because I know most of the people on this call are entrepreneurs. You have your own business maybe, or small businesses. And I've been self-employed my whole life. I have never had a proper job. Right? Even when I was a school teacher, I taught for 3 days a week and did my own hugim, my own classes on the other days. And in Hollywood and the theater, you're going from one project to the next project. You don't have like a boss for very long. And so I've always had to do my own accounts. I've also had to do my own marketing, find my own jobs. If no job comes, then how am I going to pay the rent? So I've been living with that since I left college, back in the 80s. So the thing I wanted to say about overwhelm, first of all, is there's a difference between overwhelm and overload, right? Those are two different things, and I want to explain how and why. So for 10 years, I was in a Musservad with Rabbi Kellerman. I don't know if any of you know that name. Rabbi Kellerman lives here in Jerusalem, in Har Nov. And part of that group, we did a lot of exercises, you could say in English, of how to, like, self-improvement kind of exercises. And I remember one of them, he did a whole series of sessions on to-do lists. And he was very adamant that if your to-do list is impossible, then that is not being nice to yourself. Right? And if you're not being nice to yourself, then you're not going to be in a good mood, and it's very hard to run your business, right? Just to put it in our context. So he kind of taught us that if you have more than anything that's possible to do that day on your to-do list, then it needed to be crossed off. This is not, I'm not giving advice here. I'm just saying what we learned in this class. And it really got down to, I think, breathing, maybe using the bathroom, and going back to bed. Because anything else you put on that list, it's quite possible you might not get it done today. I mean, you'll probably eat, you'll probably, clean your teeth or wash your face. But things like, that huge list of emails you need to send out, and that marketing plan, and all those things that we often put on ourselves as self-employed people, if you don't get to it and you get to the end of the day, I don't know if you were like me, but I used to beat myself up because I hadn't done, oh gosh, I didn't send that email, and I didn't do this, and I didn't do that. So it was just a kind of an introduction to seeing there's a big difference between overload and overwhelm. So earlier this week, I had a client in America. I coach people around the world now with anxiety and all kinds of issues. And this couple have just had a new baby. They have 2 or 3 small children already, thank God, and they had a newborn baby. And I was supposed to have a session with the mother, but she, of course, was feeding the baby. So the husband came on, and he was just like, "I'm overwhelmed. I'm so overwhelmed. There's so much to do. How does my wife do it? I'm trying to take the kids to school and do a carpool and lunches, and she's feeding the baby." And I was like, "Okay, first of all, take a breath, breathe." And I was showing him that whatever was on the to-do list can't actually make you feel anything. Overwhelm is the experience we have when we have a lot of thinking about our to-do list. See, there's a difference. See, for most of my life, before I came across the ideas that I want to share with you, I thought that things on the outside of me were creating my experience. If my mother would just, leave me alone, if the boyfriend would leave or he would come back, if they would pay me more, if she called me back, if all those people would behave and do what I wanted, then I would feel okay. Then I'd be able to do what I need to do. And I found out that that's just not true. That's not how experience is created. We can never feel our circumstances. We can only feel our thinking about our circumstances. So I had a big insight with this with my business, where I've always hated doing my own accounts. I don't know about you guys, but like I'm not very good with numbers. Thank God I have other talents, like in that little video that hi Sarah, amazing video that Sarah made. You know, I won an Academy Award in Hollywood. I did a lot of amazing creative things with my hands. I've been blessed with some amazing talents with my hands, but numbers, not so much, right? My mind just kind of goes blank when it comes to figures and calculations. But as a self-employed person, I have to do my accounts. And here in Israel, I have to do them every 2 months. So I used to have this experience where when it came up to the end of that second month, I'd start going like, oh no, here it comes. You know, and I would joke with my friends that I'd either need a Valium, which thank God I never took, or I'm going to have to reward myself with chocolate or, you know, a pedicure or something afterwards. And I would psych myself up to doing it. And then I would invariably make mistakes because I hate doing it. And then I hate it even more because I've made mistakes. Now I have to turn over and start again. And then it would get more difficult. And I was like, this is why I hate it. And then about a couple of years ago, I suddenly had this insight and I realized that the calculator and the spreadsheet can't actually make me feel anything. Right? Because, I mean, my accountant, he loves doing accounts. It's his job. It's been his career and he's very good at it. You know, his bookkeepers, they love it. So it can't be numbers or calculators or highlighters or any of those things that I use, you know, to do my accounts. They can't produce an experience. It's my thinking about it. And this is a principle I'm going to share with you that is true throughout your life, throughout the world. Nothing on the outside of us can make us feel anything. We're only ever feeling or thinking about our circumstances, our situations, our relationships. And once I started to see that, it started to give me some freedom. And so to go back to the accounts for a moment, ever since that insight, my accounts have been so much easier. Now, I won't say I like it. It's still not my favorite thing to do, but the difficulties around it have kind of just melted away. And I started to see that I was actually making it more difficult than it needed to be. I was actually creating problems that the anxiety was making it, you know, more problematic, which was, see, like it was a chain reaction. The overthinking was making me anxious. The anxiousness made me make mistakes. The mistakes made me hate it more. So then I would get more anxious. So we played the videotape backwards and it all started with thinking, right? So my counts are now much more simplified. I found a much more simple way of doing it. I mean, it's just me. I mean, I don't employ anybody. So it is pretty simple. I was just making it complicated with my thinking. So what we're looking at here is the difference between what I'm going to call an outside-in experience or an inside-out experience. When I think things from the outside are creating my experience, I'm going to be a victim of all of those things. I'm going to be at the mercy of noisy neighbors, annoying family members, clients who say yes and then don't show up, you know, whatever it is. We all have these situations where I can like just go, and it can drive me crazy. And then I realize it's actually just my thinking. Now, that doesn't excuse other people's bad behavior. So I just want to be clear about this. In the introduction, it mentioned that I was mugged 3 times. This is when I lived in England. I grew up in England. I went to Manchester University and then worked in London before I moved to Los Angeles. And I was mugged 3 times. The first time was in a nightclub. My skull was fractured. I can put my finger on it. I know you can't see it, but I know it's right here. The second time, my neck was broken. Second and third vertebrae were fractured in the top of my neck. And the last time, and 3 herniated discs also. So I experienced a lot of trauma and a lot of violence. Now, you could say that that's what created what's now called PTSD. This was in the early 1980s. The PTSD had only just gone in the DSM. That's the book that psychiatrists and sociologists and psychiatrists use for diagnosing. And PTSD was only just being recognized in America. So in Manchester, in 1980, the only treatment I got was a cup of tea, suck it up and walk it off and go home. That was pretty much what I was told. And as a result, I got very, very isolated, very much up in my head. I was reliving and reliving the events over and over and over again. My physical state got really bad. In fact, I ended up at the doctor because my periods had stopped for a whole year. And when I told my doctor what happened, he then sent me to a psychiatrist at Manchester Royal Infirmary. And I remember the psychiatrist, first of all, it took me 2 panic attacks just to get there. Just getting out of the house at that point was really, really challenging. And I remember the psychiatrist, she asked me to tell her what happened. So I told her what happened. And then she said, tell me again. And in my head, I was screaming like, didn't you hear me the first time? And that was basically her treatment. Keep telling the story over and over again. And that was her idea for helping people get well. And I remember screaming in my head thinking, I do that all day at home. I need you to show me how to not do that. And this really, like I said in the video, this kind of really set me on my path of helping other people recover from what really are terribly traumatic experiences. But I can tell you now, looking back, that those events probably only lasted for about 2 minutes tops. I mean, as horrendous as they were, like the middle one where 3 men jumped me at 6 o'clock in the evening, beat the living daylights out of me. I thought I was going to die. It lasted for a maximum of 2 minutes, but the suffering lasted for a good 10 years. What is now called PTSD lasted probably for 10 years. And that really was me reliving it and reliving it and reliving it. And someone asked me the other day if I had any residual trauma from any of those things. And I was like, what is that? The question didn't even compute in my mind because I don't, first of all, I don't think about it very often because I usually only tell the story in situations like this where it might be helpful to someone. I'm not that trauma. I can only suffer from that trauma if I think about it. So really, and this might sound a little strange, it's no different between my experiences with doing my accounts and the calculator and the highlighters and the spreadsheets and these life-threatening events that happened to me 30, 40 years ago, because I can only ever experience something in my mind. So that might be challenging to something you've heard before, but I could just suggest you could get curious about that. How can we experience anything if it's not happening through our thinking? So this kind of led into me working with people with chronic pain. And I'm going to talk more about that towards the end of this little session. So now I want to talk about imposter syndrome, and you'll see how this will fit in also. So after I recovered from the PTSD and I started to kind of get myself back on my feet, I was living in London. And I did textiles in college and I'd always made things with my hands. And I started working in the theatre. And one event led to another, and I can see how it was kind of divinely inspired now looking backwards. But I ended up working on my first movie. And the first movie was, if you remember, the first Flintstones movie. The cartoon was turned into a live action movie. And I was hired by Jim Henson's Creature Shop. So Jim Henson, remember, he made Miss Piggy and Kermit, and those are all done in New York. And in London and in Burbank in California, they have what they call the Creature Shop. So they did then, it's all computers now, where we made puppets for, maybe for Muppet movies, but for other people's movies. So we were hired to make all the creatures for this Flintstones movie. And before that, I'd only ever done theater. I'd done a couple of commercials, but very, very small projects. And suddenly here I was sitting in a boardroom at Jim Henson's Creature Shop. And around the table were all kinds of creative artists. There were many of the people had actually won Academy Awards. If you don't know, there are actually Academy Awards are also handed out for technical people. They're done on a different day. The Academy Award that we won, luckily, is done on the night with all the actors, which is fun for us. But the things like I've worked with people who got an Academy Award for snowmaking machines or like smoke machines, earthquake effects, stuff like that. So I was sitting around this table with these incredibly talented people, these guys who'd been working on movies for years, who'd worked with all the best people. And we're kind of brainstorming different ideas. We're doing research and development. And I was sitting there going like, should I be here? Should I be here? Maybe this is a mistake. Oh my gosh, they're going to find out I don't know what I'm doing. They'll find out that I'm no good at this. I've never worked on a movie before. What do I know? And I'm up in my head, experiencing the stress of my fearful thinking. and I'm not present in the room. And then all of a sudden I noticed behind, on the other side of the table, behind these guys, there was a huge, big black and white photograph of Jim Henson looking over, I think, no, big, yeah, big, and Kermit's looking over his shoulder, right? It was just the sweetest photograph. It was just like, this man just loved what he did, making children happy, building puppets, educating kids. And it just kind of brought me back to the moment. And I came back to the moment, and I was able to participate in the meeting, share some ideas, and no one kicked me out. No one said you shouldn't be here, right? See, I was feeling that fearful thinking. And what I want to suggest is that our thinking 99.9% of the time is a lie. Now, I don't mean a lie as in it's not telling the truth, but I would say it's not a good representation of reality. The reality was I had every right to be there. The reality was I was qualified and I had ideas that were valued and accepted and went on to make the movie great. In fact, I ended up being the only one who got sent on location back to Los Angeles to supervise all these creatures. On my first day, I meet Steven Spielberg, John Goodman, I met Elizabeth Taylor on my first movie, right? So clearly I had a right to be there and I did a good job and they kept hiring me. I then had a 20-year career in Hollywood. So these kind of thoughts where we think we're not good enough, we think we shouldn't be here, people aren't going to hire us, I can still get them. It still crops up sometimes. Fast forward, I now write books. And I hadn't written anything since I was in high school. And when a lot of people kept saying to me, oh, you should write a book. I should write a book about the trauma. I could write a book about moving to different continents because we lived in Australia for 6 months while working on a movie. I could write a book about changing careers. And I thought, I'll just smush it all in one book because you know how they say everybody has a book inside of them, right? Everybody could write at least one book. So I secretly wrote this book and I didn't tell anyone because I was scared. I was scared what you would think of me. I thought it sounded pompous, kind of like, like I was showing off or something. And so I wrote it on a Word document and I kind of got to the end of it. And I had a friend at that time who was a book developer and an editor. And I said to her, can I send you something that I've written? And she's like, yeah, sure. And I said to her, please be nice to me because if it's a pile of rubbish, let me down gently. Because like I said, I hadn't written anything since I was like in high school, because in college I did, an arts degree. So, and I can tell you, it's one of the scariest things I've ever done. I remember looking at the keyboard to press send to this email, this document. And I've done some scary stuff in my life. I was on a bus exploded with the first year I was in Israel. I've, been mugged 3 times, giving up an Academy Award Hollywood career, for what I didn't know. I've done some scary stuff. And sending that first draft of this book to her was up there because what would she think of me? And so I pressed send, and a couple of days later she replied and she said, it needs work, but it's really good and I want to help you. And I was like, oh, phew, right? So we worked on it and we did the manuscript. And then before, all my books are self-published on Amazon, which is very easy to do. I'm happy to share with anybody how to do that. I wanted to give the manuscript to another friend who really is an expert in the ideas that I was sharing, who happened to live in Jerusalem at the time. So I printed it out as a manuscript and handed it to her one Thursday night. I thought maybe she could read it over Shabbat. And the next morning, Friday morning, I woke up with bum, 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 like this. My head was, like just pounding with more stories. And in between all these inspiring stories coming, I mean, like fictional stories, I realized that I'd been telling myself that I'm not academic my whole life. Like I said, I've got, creative talents, but I always had a chip on my shoulder about being academic, of doing anything with writing or words. And suddenly I've got all these stories. And I can tell you, so here are, there's now, this was the first one, right, that I said to her. We'll give you the details, but then came out number 2, then number 3. And I've just published a textbook, right? This one. And
And I'll hold them up for a second that I can get an image
yes.
with you holding up your
Oh,
books.
all of them? Yes, I'll try and hold up
Yeah,
all of
yeah, just in one shot. Okay, good.
them. And what's most exciting for me is that the latest book, which is a textbook, and the last two were Amazon #1 bestsellers for a day, but we'll take that, right? You know, like you can put Amazon #1 bestseller on your resume, even if it's for a day. This one, which is it's the collection of over 60 stories of people who've recovered from mental health diagnoses. Everything from PTSD like me to bulimia to OCD, even schizophrenia, ADHD, even autism. The ideas that I'm sharing with you that we're always feeling are thinking. I have colleagues around the world who have worked with so many people, and these people have recovered. And it's incredible. So I wanted to collect these stories as like a database, you know, a resource to show people. And then two PhDs, two guys who I'm familiar with, who are colleagues of mine, independently, they had the idea to take the data from my book and turn it into a research paper. And we've just finished all the editing, and it's been submitted to the American, was it the APA, the American Psychological Association? They have several journals. So it's under review right now. So look at that. If you hear anything today, you just keep showing up. Here I was, you know, beaten, PTSD, couldn't get out of my house, absolutely terrified, go on and have this Hollywood career, start writing books. And now you know, I've got four books on Amazon, 10 actually, if you include all the translations, and a research paper, a peer-reviewed research paper. Not bad for a girl who only has 2 A levels. Those from England will understand what that means. So you just keep showing up. And um, so to go back to the PTSD and the imposter syndrome and overwhelm, how do all these things tie together? So the other topic that Leslie and I came up with was insecurity. So maybe you're beginning to see now that insecurity is underneath all of those topics. And I'm going to suggest also that all the diagnoses in this book, all of them, I guarantee you, if you named me any mental health diagnosis, I guarantee you it started with prolonged stressful thinking. Because like I said about the going backwards and forwards, if you play a videotape, any mental health diagnosis, like whether it's bulimia or OCD, PTSD, CPTSD, you can look at the behavior, but the behavior is usually a coping mechanism. It's an alarm signal, if you like, that we've been hanging out in prolonged stressful thinking for too long. And before the prolonged stressful thinking, there was probably some overthinking. And before the overthinking, there was probably some insecurity. And before the insecurity, there was probably some hurt feelings, some guilt, maybe some doubt, you know, like I had about my writing, like I had about even leaving my house after I was mugged. You know, the insecure feeling is what I'm actually experiencing, not the circumstances. So going further from that, what I would point out to anybody that I work with clients with all of these situations, is that underneath all that insecure thinking, we are okay. We have innate well-being. We are, the analogy I like to use is the blue sky. Like, so I'm looking out my window right now and there's beautiful blue sky over Jerusalem. But a couple of days ago, last week, you know, we had gray, we had clouds, you know, and in sometimes we can have terrible storms. You know, that's one thing I learned about when I first moved here, because we forget we're kind of up a mountain. And, you know, in the winter, it can get dark at 3 in the afternoon. You can have these terrible storms. There's, you know, hail and snow and bits of tree flying down the street. I can remember living in Harno the first year and, you know, the bus shelter shaking and, you know. Now, if I hadn't gone to 3rd grade and learned about weather systems, then you might think the end of the world's coming. You know, but luckily, you know, I had a good teacher in 3rd grade, and we learned about how, you know, storms come in and the rain falls and then the storm goes and it evaporates and becomes clouds, and it's a cycle. It goes around. And it's the same with our experience. It's the same with our thinking. We can have an absolute thought storm, right? It can feel like the end of the world. Like maybe someone's betrayed you. Maybe it feels like your business is falling apart. Maybe all that effort you put in on social media, nobody's responding. You've planned this course and it's like nobody's signing up. Trust me, I've had those experiences, right? And and we can like feel like we want to give up, but it's actually only happening in my head. And when the thought storm passes, the blue sky is still there. Like you don't have to order blue sky from Amazon, right? You are the blue sky. And so that's the way we are made. Even people who are experiencing really what you might think as incurable mental health illnesses like schizophrenia or psychosis. I can tell you, I have met people who have recovered from these conditions because it's not actually who they are. It's maybe what happened to them, where they found themselves. And I have a colleague, Dr. Judy Sedgman, who she gave me a wonderful description of a diagnosis one time. She said, a diagnosis is like say you were homesick with the flu for a couple of weeks. You feel dreadful. You've got a pimple on the end of your nose. You're having a bad hair day. Someone scratched your car and didn't leave a note. You missed that promotion. You missed that client, and someone comes along and takes your ID photograph and says, "This is going to be your ID for the rest of your life." And you're like, "No!" Right? It was just that really bad, horrible, awful day, right? It was just a terrible moment. Well, that's what a diagnosis is like. Whether whatever kind of diagnosis it could be, it may describe how we were on that particular day, but it's not who we are. So things like, imposter syndrome isn't actually in the DSM. I looked it up. So, but I did actually look up a definition, and it says it's the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's efforts or skills. So in Google, where I got this, right, there were words that were underlined, like belief and deserved. So belief and deserved are thoughts, right? So how is it that I can be so confident that I'm not my thinking? It's because it's always moving. Thoughts, like I said, are like clouds. They're constantly moving through our minds. They are never fixed in one place. It might feel like they are. Sometimes we can feel like our thoughts get stuck, or that we're, in a rut, or we're kind of really feel the pressure of that thinking. Well, what I've learned is that the feeling like pressure or anxiety, for me, it would be urgency. Like, gotta send that email right now, gotta post something right now. That urgency is a clue that I've gotten caught up in my thinking, and it's probably unreliable. It's not the truth. And if I just step back and become an observer, then the thinking can pass through and I come back to the blue sky. So I'll just finish with this. My favorite analogy for this is the snow globe. So if you can see that snow globe, right? If I keep shaking it up, and shaking it up could be me feeding or fighting my stress. It could be me listening to those fearful thoughts. It could be me, experiencing doubt and anxiety about myself or my skills. And I'm constantly shaking up. And I love doing this with clients. I say, what did I do to stop all the glitter like swirling around? Nothing. Right? In fact, I stopped doing, and that has been the secret to my health getting better. For example, I had chronic pain from all those injuries from the muggings. I had a 25-year constant chiropractic appointment. Every month I went to the chiropractor, and it was only when I stopped going to the chiropractor and I started understanding how my mind works and how experience is created, my body stopped screaming at me. I'd had IBS, chronic allergies, asthma, iritis, eczema, psoriasis, you name it, I'd had it at some point, right? I was paralyzed several times in my 20s. I was taken off a movie set paralyzed because my back would seize up. I had a walking stick when I was 27 years old, and all of that's gone. I've been pain-free now for 10 years. I still have a bit of nasal stuff because I think there's something weird, like I have an inverted nasal septum. That's it. That's the technical term. So I'm always a bit. But when I first moved here to Israel, I found out I was allergic to olives, olive tree blossom, and cedar. And as you know, you can't go for more than 2 meters in Israel without bumping into an olive tree. There's one in my courtyard. In the first couple of years I was here, I'd want to rip my face off. Like my eyes were burning, I couldn't breathe. My voice was disappearing, and it's been gone for like 5 or 6, 7 years now. I love living here for many reasons, not just because my allergies are gone, right? But it's been amazing, and I see now the really clear connection between the fact that my body was screaming at me because I was in so much anxiety up in my head. And as soon as the anxiety fell away and I started to understand how the mind works, then my body didn't need to scream at me anymore. And my writing is clearer. Everything that I'm doing now is just the more in the moment I can be, the more efficient and the more better I'm operating. That doesn't mean I don't get moments, because I do, because I'm human like everybody else. I can get, I'm offering a course based on the Painless book. I've done it several times, and I'm doing another one starting towards the end of January. And 5 people have signed up so far. But what I've learned is people always sign up last minute, right, Leslie? Right?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? So
Yeah.
just keep showing up. You never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. Hannah, before we move to the next part, we have a question from Sarah
Yeah.
that you mentioned a bit about it. Is overwhelm really stressful thinking as opposed to overload, which means that you have too many things on your to-do list?
Yes. Yes, that's a really good summary of it. Because if you think about it, people can get overwhelmed with only having 2 things to do, right? They might have 2 things to do today, and then their toast falls on the floor, and that's it. I can't cope. Back to bed, right? That's someone who's really struggling, and maybe we've been there. I know during my PTSD days and dark, the darkness, it was a struggle just to get out of bed and have a shower, right? And then going out the house was too much, and I'd have to go back to bed again. And then other times, we could have 100 things to do that day. And you know that phrase, if you want someone to do something, ask a busy person, right? And because when you're doing a lot of things, it's easy to add on another thing. So it's the to-do list isn't actually what we're experiencing. We're experiencing our thinking about the to-do list. And what I found when I used to get overwhelmed by a to-do list, when I actually wrote it down on a piece of paper, I actually realized that it was actually doable. It was my thinking about it that was kind of blowing it out of proportion. And oh my gosh, how am I going to get there? How am I going to do this? And I've got to research that. And then I'm feeling the anxious thinking about what I have to do. When you come back to what you just have to do, and you stay in the moment, and you do this thing and you do that thing and you do that thing, it often is doable. And if it's not, like I was saying about what Rabbi Kellerman taught us, if it's not doable in that day, please don't beat yourself up about it, because that would also be a lot of feeling of thinking, right? We'll do it tomorrow. So yeah, it really, overwhelm is not a thing, because overwhelm, you cannot put it in a box. You can't see it on an X-ray, right? But a to-do list, I can look at a piece of paper, and I can, when I'm quiet and in my right mind, I can make decisions about prioritizing and what to do next. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Ladies, don't run away. Hannah is still with us. We'll run through till 11 o'clock. We don't end at 10:30. So, Hannah, firstly, that's fascinating. I love also just your calmness and just everything about what you're saying
Next
and doing.
copy
So,
of
thank you
Power
so
Talks
much.
with Woman
So, what we're going to
Entrepreneurs.
be doing now, okay, Justine. Yay, Justine is getting the copy. Now, if you have already purchased your own copy, you will still get it, and then you can give it to somebody else as a gift. So, Justine, you will be getting your next copy. I'll be in contact with you regarding how you're getting it. And the third and final spin, let's just see though with Vivian. 1 second, let's just see here. Third and final spin. I found this tool really cool, but I'm trying it, as I say, for the first time online. Okay, Tarla, are you still here?
Yeah.
Right.
Hi.
Okay, great. So, Tarla, you live in Israel, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay, I will be in contact with you regarding getting your copy of the book. So well done.
Okay.
Congratulations, Mazal Tov. Should I
Well
spin
done.
again in terms of Vivian Khanna? Yes, is that
Yeah.
what you want me to do?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right, final spin to see who gets their copy of Power Talks with Women Entrepreneurs. Oh, Naomi, it is you. Once again, I don't know if you already have a copy, but if not, you'll be getting another one and you can give it as a gift to somebody. All right, cool. So I found this quite cool to do, this online thing. All right, so Yeshar Koach to Naomi and to Tarla and to Justine, who will be getting their copies of the book. So without further ado, we have another about 12 minutes left. I'm going to be featuring again and spotlighting Hannah, and Hannah will be summarizing, also answering any questions. I think at this stage, best if you can write it also in the chat. I'll check if there's any more. And Hannah, take it away. I've loved what you've had to say so far.
Thank you. And that spinning wheel was so much fun. I might have to,
It was fun, right? And it
yeah,
actually worked. I'm so excited. It's the first time I'm doing it, and it actually worked. And this way you can see it's all fair. It's not like I'm pulling out specific names.
right. I might have to steal that for one of my groups. Thank you.
With pleasure. It's not mine. It's not copyrighted or anything. You can all use it for any of your groups.
Yeah. So Vivian, who won there, the first one, Vivian is one of my groups. I have a membership group that I do on I have 3 live coaching sessions a week. It's for a very reasonable price. I love leading groups, and so I have a membership group. And on Sunday evenings, we have a book club, and we're just starting a new book in a couple of weeks. We're just finishing up a novel we've been reading for a couple of months. And on Monday mornings, which is normally this time, so as soon as we finish, I'm going to jump over to my group. We have a group coaching call, and I timed it for early morning Israel so that all my Australian clients can come. Because poor Australians, I mean, they're amazing, but they miss out on everything because everything's in the Northern Hemisphere time zone. So I did a session for Australians on Monday mornings, which also works beautifully with Israel. And then on Thursday evenings, we have a group coaching where I have a guest speaker. I think this week we're doing a coaching demo. So I'm going to coach somebody in front of the group, and people can volunteer to be, if you want to be coached for free, if you don't mind having people listening in. And yeah, it's a wonderful supportive group. And that's kind of what I wanted to say is, if I just went through some of the comments on the chat, and thank you for the compliments. And I really love sharing how these ideas helped me and how they're helping other people. In fact, I fractured my ankle a couple of weeks ago, and I started physiotherapy yesterday. And when I went to the physio, she was asking me, what do I do during the day? And I said, well, I'm sitting most of the time. I'm writing or I'm coaching people. And I said, I write books. And I said, I wrote a book on pain, right? And she said to me, bring me a copy of your book. So who knows? Maybe I'll start, working for Maccabi, the health insurance people. She was really excited about hearing it because I said to her, do you have clients who have pain and there's no real explanation for it? And she said, oh, yes. So I've worked with a doctor from Hadassah Hospital also who sent me clients because, like I was saying, that when we get into stress and anxiety, it often shows up in our bodies. I remember after the war started back in October last year, um, I don't watch very much news, but during that first 10 days, I was watching a lot of news, like partly out being responsible and partly because nobody knew what was going on. And I'd say about 10, 15 days into the war, my back started hurting, my skin started getting itchy. And I was like, it was like a tap on the shoulder. Hannah, careful. You're watching too much news. I found I was getting up in my head, which I'm not judging myself. I think it's completely understandable considering what we were all going through. But I feel so blessed now that I can understand the language of my body. When I might not realize that my thinking's getting stressful, my body will remind me. For some of us, it's through stomach pains or gut problems. Some of us, it's through itchy skin or, sometimes food intolerances. I've worked with people with histamine intolerance issues, all kinds of stuff. And it's amazing when you realize how we're feeling our thinking. If our thinking is stressful or our thinking is in the toilet, that's how we're going to feel. It's a very reliable system. If you think about it, you can't have miserable, grumpy, unhappy thinking and feel good. The same as you can't have abundant, joyful, happy thinking and feel bad. You know, you can't feel lousy if you're having amazing, abundant, joyful, happy thoughts. It's a very reliable system. And the more we understand it, the more we can benefit and don't have to be a victim of it. So we've only got a few minutes left. Like I said at the beginning, I love answering questions. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. If you want to put your little yellow hand up or mute yourself, I'd be happy to.
So firstly, maybe just share your details, how people can
Yeah,
get hold of you, Hannah.
yes, certainly. Thank you. So I have so Gmail is hannahstudley@gmail.com. Just my name at Gmail. I have two websites. The main one is hannahstudley.com, and Hannah spelled Chana, and Studley spelled Studley. I also have another website that is connected to the textbook that I mentioned. So that's beyonddiagnosis.com, and there's a hyphen between beyond hyphen diagnosis. You can find me on Facebook. I also have a Facebook group, has over 3,000 people in the group, but sadly, Facebook algorithms these days, not everybody gets to see all the posts. So yeah, you can find me on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn, although I don't spend so much time there. And I think I mentioned I'm starting a course I think it starts on the 22nd of January. I've done several courses based on my Painless book. See, this is me dressed up as Frida Kahlo, if you're familiar with Frida Kahlo. She had a terrible pain story. And the course is really going to be focused on how pain is a signal. It's a message. I call it the innate well-being system. It's like we're all blessed with this innate well-being system that talks to us. Like when we get hungry, our tummies rumble. When we're too hot, we sweat, right? It's not a judgment, it's just information. So when we get, when I was getting anxious, my back started hurting. When my skin gets itchy, I can't breathe properly. And so a lot of the people I work with are having various medical issues, even fertility issues, and health anxiety also is a big one. Health anxiety, just having fear about what if something goes wrong and maybe the doctor missed something, and that's all anxiety that we might be feeling that then will actually, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, then that actually produces physical issues, and so people can get very distressed about that. So the course is starting in January. It's for 8 weeks on Wednesday nights. It'll be 8 p.m. our time. So if you want more information about the course, then please reach out, and I'll be happy to give you more details. And like I said, if you want...
Great. And maybe just like a sentence or two, wrap up, sum up something about the topic, Hannah, in terms of tips for moving forward to overcome overwhelm, imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
pain. I know they're different things.
Yeah, I think what I really want to say to people is you are never broken. Whatever you've been through, whatever kind of stress, tragedy, trauma, none of us are ever broken. We all have innate well-being. And when you understand that you're only ever feeling your thinking, and thought is always moving, every thought, every broken heart, every stress, every doubt, every imposter thought you've ever had, every insecurity has moved on. It never gets stuck. And when you see that to be true, we don't have to be a victim of it, and we can thrive and just live our amazing lives. I think there's a quote I love where it said, living ordinary lives with extraordinary love. I think that's a great one to live by. Thank you.
Right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. Wow, Hannah. Yeah, I'm just actually responding about when somebody in the chat wrote about about Marju, who is joining us from abroad, and we're delighted to see all those joining us from abroad. Hillary's joining us from South Africa. You said Vivian's joining from, did you say Switzerland?
Switzerland, yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's wonderful to see people, in different places. All
Mhm.
right, ladies, we've come to the end of another Professional Women's Networking Forum, a monthly Professional Women's Networking Forum. Hannah, thank you for being a fabulous guest. really fabulous. As I said to you, when we know doing the break rooms were in operation, I just love your calmness and your nature and just the way you talk and put everything across. So thank you for those wise words of wisdom, those many words of wisdom, and for sharing with us. Obviously, it's a topic that we could speak a lot more about. So you're welcome to follow Hannah, join her groups, read her books. And I look forward to seeing you, obviously, again